Hi, everyone. Welcome to Digital Dilemmas this week. I'm John Murphy.
And I am Amber Clevenger. And today, our guest is our very own John Murphy. I will be asking some questions, and he will be sharing some of the results of his most recent diggings and delvings into the world of AI and ethics, and sort of telling us about where he has landed, what he's thinking about today.
Digital Dilemmas is a Lenk Media original podcast.
Just to leap right in, let me ask you this, that we've had several guests on at this point, and we've talked a lot about AI and about the ethical dilemmas that it poses, that it may pose or may not pose, or whatever. What, in your opinion, what is the most pressing ethical dilemma that is presented by the development of AI?
Well, here's what I think, and I'm a big fan. I'll tee it up this way. I'm a big fan of Tristan Harris. I really like and admire a lot of his research and his work. And I spent some time really diving into what he's been saying lately, and I agree with a lot of it. And here's where I land on that. And we'll talk a lot about it during the show today. I'm not as worried about how it's used in education right now or the bias. Those are issues. I'm not making light of them. I'm most concerned about how it is deployed in a safe and reasonable way. My biggest concern is that right now, and as we go through the show, you'll see why I get there. My biggest concern right now is it is being deployed in an open sourced, open way. That is what concerns me. This is way too powerful of a tool to be rolled out in an unsafe and irresponsible way. So that's my big concern right now.
So that's funny, because usually I hear the words open source, and I think of it as a positive thing.
Yep.
Sharing knowledge rather than hoarding it. That kind of thing. Why is open source bad in this case? Or, why do you think so?
Why? So we usually think of the word democracy as a good thing, and it is. And then we usually think of the word democratization or open source as a good thing. In this particular case, democratization itself of this tool is not a good thing. So as of this time, it is my understanding that about 5 companies dominate the marketplace. Google, AI itself. This is not in the hands of at the level that our 5 companies, that are all Western companies, have yet. It's not in the hands of China or any of the bad guys yet. This is in the hands of the 5 primary companies that are rolling out AI. And they're doing so in an open sourced way, which allows the bad actors to get in and participate. And I know I'm putting the cart before the horse before I tell the story here, and I'm going to go into the story in a minute. But this is the case where these 5 companies, and I think now I understand why some of the past CEOs of these companies have been testifying with their concerns. These 5 companies control whether this gets rolled out in a responsible way or not. And in my opinion, it needs to be slowed down a little bit in how it is rolled out so that they can test out the biases and the other dangers before it is rolled out to the public. Otherwise, the bad guys do have access to it and can use it. And I'll add one more thing to that. The way that AI gets more powerful each day, week, month is by increasing its computing power by money. So the more chips you put into it, the more money you put into it, the faster it learns, the faster it gets smarter. These 5 companies need to be doing so in a responsible way. Otherwise, it gets out, and that's what the concern is. And I'm going to tell a
So,
story today that I think will help explain that.
okay, well, because who decides what a slow and responsible way is? The heads of these five companies?
That's a great question, and it's a concern. I think the short answer is yes, but this is where I think a show like this is important. All of us as consumers, the more that we understand this technology, and I'm not saying anything I say on this show is I'm 100% right, but the discussion is what's important. I think if consumers understand what AI is and where it's going, we can put pressure on the companies um, to answer your question. I think the less we know and the more they control things, that's a scary proposition as well.
So why don't you keep referring to a story? Why don't you tell us the story?
Yeah, I'll start a little bit. So, and a lot of this is Tristan's work, so I want to make sure I give him credit. Um, so let's go back to our first contact or interaction with AI, which was social media. So when we're on social media and we have our algorithms, and everybody knows what that means these days, that actually was our first contact with AI. And as we know now, it didn't go so well. So when we invent a new technology, such as social media, or even if we went back to Oppenheimer in the physical world with nuclear power, when we uncover a new technology, we actually also uncover a new class, a new set of responsibilities that we have to come up with. We didn't do that with social media, primarily because we didn't really know. For example, we don't need data privacy laws until computers can keep all our data and sell it. We didn't need the right to be forgotten until computers kept all our data forever. We didn't need nuclear test treaties until we had nuclear weapons. So these new technology called social media came along. It inferred new power. It started a race between companies, but there were no laws, no responsible rollout, not because the humans were being bad or at first, um, it just was. So, for example, when social media gets rolled out, we all think about, it's going to create communities. It's going to give voice to people who normally don't have a voice. We're going to be a share information amongst people that we normally couldn't share. All these wonderful things that social media does today were all promised and are all true. And as I know that you're a big proponent of social media for the good, and so am I. Um, but what we didn't anticipate was uh, mental health issues, um, all the things that we've talked about on the show, the dark side of social media. What I'm getting to is that the rollout of social media was done because the rules of the game were high engagement. So, in Tristan's work, he quotes some famous people that say something like the following: show me the race, and I'll show you the result. Show me the incentive, and I'll show you the outcome. So in social media, the incentive is engagement. And the race is the more engagement that we get, you have a winner. That's the business model of social media. Well, we know what happened. We have a lot of problems with social media. Now, the second contact comes along with AI, which is what we're seeing right now. And the concern is that the business model for these five current companies right now is the faster they can roll out capabilities and the faster their AI product improves, they're the winner. That's the problem.
So
So
how
in
do we
social
balance
media, go ahead, I'm sorry.
so how do we balance the sort of the need for innovation and, people's desire for the latest technology with with ethical considerations.
Well, if it look, we don't have all the answers yet, and I certainly don't. But I think that all of us, through people like Tristan Harris and other influencers, have to be working with the leaders of these five companies to do more testing behind the scenes before it gets rolled out. And I'll give you an example. So let's say AI is improving exponentially every day. It's learning more and more every day. And the more computing power and financial investments we put into each release, the faster it learns. And we're hearing from these companies that it's starting to teach itself and they don't even understand how it's working. So when you ask ethically, how can we control it? That's where the rollout to me is most important. If you are creating a tool that, for example, if you ask ChatGPT, ChatGPT, can you create the following drug that is less toxic to humans? You know, tell it the drug you want, but it's less toxic. And it can give you an answer in 5 minutes. You know, let's say this is the next generation of AI. Well, if you haven't tested that capability before it gets rolled out, then what can happen is a bad actor can say, "Hey, ChatGPT, can you take this drug and make it more toxic so that it can kill people quickly?" And it can give you the answer in 5 minutes. Once again, that's an example of these type of capabilities, if they are tested behind the scenes before they are rolled out responsible, might be able to reduce the damage or the potential dark side of AI. So that's like a simple point I'm trying to make about that.
Do you think, you talked a little bit about the algorithmic bias earlier.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a result of, the sort of the creators, the scientists, and the data analysts who are the designers who are creating the AI machines, or do you think that it originates sort of from the biases that are inherent in the data that the systems are mining?
I think it's in the data that they're mining. For example, an exaggerated example of your question is if primarily um, wealthy and economically people are on the internet for the last 30 years, and that demographic is primarily white, male, um, the data is out there and that it's learning from the data that exists. So I don't think the developers are designing this in a bad or evil way. I think it's just that's the data that's out there and that's how the AI machine, for lack of a better phrase, learns. And I think that also gets to how you can fix it. So if the five companies that I mentioned, if they are developing AI tools and they inherently know that the data out there can create bias, then it would behoove them before they roll out that next release to do everything they can from a developer standpoint and a training of the AI standpoint to potentially create less bias. Once again,
See,
the
I
rollout
disagree.
model. Go
I
ahead, I'm sorry.
disagree. I disagree. You say it behooves them. It morally, yes, it behooves them, but financially, it does not behoove them at all. It
Right.
behooves them
So,
to get it out as quickly as possible, and with whatever bias comes along with that. And there is no financial incentive to do things the right way.
well, you're right. So you really just made the point I was making a few minutes ago where show me the race, I'll show you the result. Show me what the business model is, I'll tell you what's going to happen. So in social media, The business model is the race for engagement. That's the winner. That's the financial winner. And we have the good and the bad. If you ask, you just made the point, if the business model for AI is to roll out as fast as you can the next capability so that you make more money, the result will be it won't go well. So it's really about changing the business model. You're right.
How, I guess how do you do that, and how do developers and designers and researchers and, how do they introduce transparency into their work? How do those people get held accountable moving
So
forward?
here's where I'm going. Here's where I'm going with this. Because as I did more reading, keep trying to learn more that we can share with our audience to give us some, food for discussion. I kept asking that same question, like, where do we land here? How do we fix this? Is there some legislation or some persuasion that can help? And I was, I couldn't think of it. And then um, in one of uh, in one of Tristan Harris's speeches, he said this at the end, and I really like this. AI is a moment in time for humans that we may actually be at one of those key moments, like we were in Oppenheimer when we invented nuclear weapons. We may be at that moment where we as humans have to become more mature. We have to look at what he referred to as our shadow. And I want to share what he was saying. He was saying, think of every wonderful thing that's been invented in the last 100 years, curing of diseases, uh, technology, cell phones, laptops, going to the moon, solving a lot of diseases, traveling around the world so easily, things that were unheard of 100 years ago. With each one of those wonderful things came a negative. It might have been pollution. It might have been climate change. It might have been mental health concerns. It might have been meaning that some people were left behind. Those were shadows. Those were, the negative side. We've kind of overlooked that, and we were able to get away with it in some bizarre way. And we move forward because we're making money and we're doing better and we all love it. He's saying that maybe this time with AI, the darker side of AI, we may not get away with it. And it's time for humans. We have to upgrade our institutions like government and corporations. That if we're going to create tools like AI that have the power of gods, then we need as humans to have the wisdom, the love, and prudence of gods, that we as humans, this is a moment where it's going to force us as humans to have a rite of passage, as he calls it. This is a moment in time where we have to be better at being humans. Otherwise, it may not end well for us down the road. And that's what made me understand what the CEOs of these five companies, as they have spoken in the last year, warning people. I'm wondering, what are they warning us about? It's technology. We've always been good and bad, blah, blah, blah. I think they get it, that this is happening rather quickly. AI is teaching itself without us having to teach it anymore as much. They don't quite understand where it's going down the road. And as it becomes more powerful, it will give us powerful ways to end, to end humanity at the end of the road if we don't get better at the things I just spoke about. And I don't want to be a Debbie Downer or a negative Nelly or say this is the end of the world. But what I'm saying is, and I think that's the reason for the show. And I think
It's an opportunity.
yeah, that's why we started this podcast, is we're really trying to share information with a broader audience so that everybody can understand that this, you nailed it. This is an opportunity for us as humans to start understanding what is going on, what this technology means and how we need to get better at being humans, being responsible for each other, our emotions, the earth, our governments, our institutions, our corporations, everything around us has to get better right now. That's really what the message is. Like, you can't bail out. You can't just check out this time. No, we've got to get involved and understand this so that we can all hopefully influence these companies and the governments around the world to roll this technology out responsibly. And part of that, and I want to emphasize this because I know that people ask me, well, do you use it in school, et cetera. Part of that rolling out responsibly means that all of us, my students, my neighbors, my friends, us, we should be using and learning what AI in its current form, like ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever tool you use, what does it mean? What's it like to use it? How does it make my life easier? We need to understand this, all of us, so that we can pitch in and help roll it out right and not just be consumers of it or even worse, check out and say, I don't even know what AI means and I don't understand it. And, I'm just going to go about my day. I think this is a time where we just can't go about our day. We really got to pitch in and exercise our AI muscle and help our institutions become more mature and better.
So, and I I want to wrap up and end on this question. Are you worried about AI? Do you lie awake at night worrying about this?
I'll say that no, I don't. I kind of have faith that humans are gonna get this right, and here's one of the reasons why. When I was born in 1959, I lived through the 60s and 70s and 80s, and I grew up in a time where it was very well known that either the Soviet Union or the United States, soon thereafter China, with one bad decision or one series of poor decisions by a few people, the world could end. We grew up in that environment. We understood that the world could end. Um, for for reasons, incentivized reasons, like you mentioned, like what's the incentive? All those countries came together and said, I'm not really into ending the world. So let's figure out a way that we can trust but verify each other and not end the world. And now I'm in my 60s and the world didn't end. There wasn't a nuclear war. The world did not end. And the responsible adults in our government institutions around the world kind of figured it out so that we didn't do something really, really bad. I'm in the same place today. I feel very similar to what I felt as a kid in the 60s. That wow, this stuff is powerful. This is really getting powerful. The stuff that we use in the classroom or we use at home in ChatGPT is the easy version. It's the stuff that helps make us more, it's like social media. What's the good side? Well, what's the good side of AI? It's making me more efficient. So I'm living in that little space right now, but I'm also, when I hear really smart people like Tristan Harris and others speak, now I'm understanding more and more this stuff is can be dangerous, but I have faith that the humans are going to get through this rite of passage and figure this out. I really do. I think the more people understand what's going on, the more likely we can figure it out. That's why I really want to roll this out responsibly. That's why I don't want this to turn into social media 2.0, where we just kind of rolled it out and had a good time on social media and didn't really consider the consequences.
Okay. Well, thank you for being our guest this week, John.
Hey, now that I've, it was so serious, can I have my 2 cents of the week?
Sure.
Sure, she says. All right, here's my 1 2 cent. I've been
You can't have one
going,
2 cents.
I know that doesn't make any sense.
No pun intended.
All right, I actually have
What's
two
your two
this.
cents?
I have two
No,
two
no,
cents this week. Yeah,
no, you
they'll
have,
be
you
quick.
know, what's your two? Okay, what's your 2 cents?
All right, I've been going to gyms since gyms came out. Anybody who knows me knows I've either been playing sports or working out forever. This drives me crazy. You pull into the gym to work out, and in the parking lot, you have people circling like it's Christmas looking for the parking space closest to the door. Why? You're going there to exercise and work out. Park the car and walk in wherever the free space is. Don't circle the parking lot for 20 minutes looking for the spot next to the door. I don't get that. You're
All
at the
right,
gym.
cranky old man, why don't you
No,
jog
no.
to the gym?
Well,
Why are you
I had a
even
friend.
driving at all?
That's a fair question. I had a friend of mine from I had a friend of mine from Poland who I did business with as a consultant in the 80s, and he had just immigrated to the United States with his family. And he said to me when he came over for dinner, "What are you doing tomorrow?" I go, "I'm going to the gym." He goes, "You know what I don't understand about Americans? You're going to drive 3 miles to the gym, get on a treadmill, and this is back in the 80s, and then drive home. Why don't you just walk that same distance and come back home?" He's 100% right. All right, my next and last 2 cents for this week. What is it with the self-checkout at the grocery stores now? Uh, think about this for a minute. Just a few years ago, you get in line at the grocery store, you put the food up on the conveyor belt, you swipe your card, they bag it, you leave. Now I go in the grocery store, I got to do more work. Not only am I putting it in the cart, then I got to go get in line for self-checkout, take it out of the cart again, and learn
I'm
how to
gonna quote
use and be a grocery store checkout person.
I am
I
gonna
don't know how to use these things.
I'm gonna quote you back to you when when the boys ask you questions about sports, why is it like this? Why
Oh yeah,
this
yeah, I
seems
know.
stupid. What's the reason for this? What do you always say?
Money.
Okay, so I'm gonna hazard a guess that the self-checkouts are significantly cheaper than hiring people. It's cheaper. They've got you doing the checkout person's job for free.
I know it, but it
I know
struck
it's
me the other day.
infuriating.
I'm at the grocery store,
I know,
and
you're the sucker.
I look down the way. There's one aisle open with
Yeah,
one person working.
yep.
Okay, three people in that line. I'm over in the self-checkout line with eight other people standing here going, I'm standing in line so I can go to work again. Because once I
That's
get
right.
in the front of that self-checkout, now I got to go to work.
Well, when you retire from being a professor, you'll be all trained up to be a checkout person at our
Right.
local Walmart or CVS or
Yeah,
whatever. Think of it as an internship.
I know, I know. So anyway, those are my 2 cents for the week. The gym parking lot and the self-checkout at the grocery store. That's it for this week.
Well, thank you for listening. As always, if you have any questions or suggestions, hit us up via email and we will address them on a future show.
All right, can't wait. And look forward to seeing everybody next week. All right, Digital Dilemma fans, that wraps up another episode. Thanks for tuning in and navigating our tech world with us.
Please rate us and leave a review. And if you enjoyed it, tune in next time. We'd also love it if you would send us any questions or suggest guests via email. Thanks so much for listening, and we will see you next week.
Digital Dilemmas is a Lenk Media original podcast.